will burn the incense on the altar. They will put a blindfold him with a black cloth over his face so that he will not see anything. He will put the bells on his finger and he shakes them, and he won't go into a trance, a chanting. When you listen to his words, it seems like he is flying away, chasing after the spirits, looking for the lost spirits of the sick person. Hmong people live their life depending on the leadership of the shaman. So the Hmong believe that the parents who have died or grandparents who have died become spirits. And in that condition, they return to protect the family. Because of that, they have an altar in the house that they constantly burn incense, and they believe that the spirits of the dead might be dwelling there. They even make swords from the tree, and they put swords outside of the house, telling the spirits that this house will not welcome you. If you come in, then we might have to use the sword to chase you out. And a Hmong person who is not Christian would not dare to take the altar out and burn, or to take any of the fetishes in the house out and burn. The spirit will actually kill him. We have seen that. So it would not be good just to mess with the spirits. The spirits are real, and you can only do that if you are believers in Christ and you go in the name of Christ. 1949, Ted and Renouf was sent to Siang Kwang, the first missionary to the Hmong. And he wrote to Edward Rolfe in Luang Prabang that, well, I need someone to help me to distribute the tracts, the pamphlets to the people. And Edward Rolfe said all the students are sent to their villages except one by the name Nai King. Nai King arrived in the small town of Siang Kwang, and they found a house across the street, and it was known as the haunted house. So he decided to put Nai King in there. And in that same street lived a Hmong shaman by the name Boya Tao. And Boya was watching to see whether Nai King's god was more powerful than the spirits in the house. At that same time, Mr. Boya has a cousin who served with the French military, but his wife stayed with Boya. When Ju Sang returned to visit his wife, Boya said, "Your wife has been sick, and I have done all I could to save her, but she's failing, and we cannot do anything to help." At the same time, I have been watching Nai King and a white man who live in town, and they said that they come here to teach about Hotai Yesu. Hotai Yesu means the God, Jesus. So why don't we go and call them? So they called Nai King, and Nai King called Ted and Renouf. So they were very happy. They ran into that house and shared the gospel. And in a few minutes, that family decided to accept Christ, including Boya and his cousin Ju Sang. And Ju Sang's wife was miraculously healed. Six months later, the missionaries came back to the village, and about 2,000 people already accepted Christ, just through one man and one Bible student. And they were able to bring so many people to Christ. And from those 2,000 people, that just spread to every other village. And within a few years, thousands upon thousands of Hmong people have accepted Christ. So that is how I call them a people movement among the Hmong in those years. Too many people came asking for missionaries, asking for evangelists to go to their villages. And the missionaries had to turn them down because the missionaries just could not handle those too many requests. She listened to Nike Mboya and she said, I have told you that someday God would send someone to tell us about the real God. And these two are the ones that I have prophesied. So that whole village, including that woman, accepted Christ, and that news spread to other villages that Mboya, who was the shaman, accepted Christ, and that woman who had made the prophecy also accepted Christ.
Many of these shamans who were very heavily involved, even before the missionaries had came, they witnessed that a lot of the demons that they were involved with ran away from them, and so they were confused and could not explain why. They knew that there was something great that was coming to them, but they didn't know when or how it would come to them. I experienced the same thing, having demons just flee from our village. So a lot of things that they were involved with demon practices were no longer working. There were two fellows from our village that went into town to buy the things that we lacked in our village. On their way home, they met a white fellow and they saluted him. They were astonished that he responded in Lao, speaking to them, asking them questions. And so he offered them literature, the good news, he said it was. And these two fellows brought it home, where I and two other of my fellow shamans were able to read this literature and understand that this was, in fact, the good news. This news was so great that we believed in it and we took it upon ourselves to live that lifestyle by converting our whole family to come to Christ. I knew that many of the things that I was doing was wrong. Many of the demons that I had been involved with were a lot weaker than the God that was being shared. And when I first read the Bible through Genesis, I then knew from God's creation that He was the creator of all things, angels and demons and human life. Knowing that, I was able to let go of many of the things that I was involved in the demonic life with such great confidence. From reading the literature, I could share with others.
In 1 month, more than 30-40 families have accepted Christ without a missionary, without any evangelist. It was several months later that they heard that, missionaries came to Siang Kuang and had led several people to Christ, and they had built a church, and they will dedicate the church. So 8 men from that village decided that, well, we have accepted Christ only through this book, but we have never seen the missionary, we have never seen any evangelist. So if there are all people, the Hmong in Siang Kuang, who already accepted Christ, and they are building a church building to worship God, we will go. 8 of us will go. So they traveled several days to Siang Kuang. And it was then that they actually saw the missionary, they actually saw the evangelist, and they talked to them and encouraged their faith. And they returned to their village and continued evangelism. Many of the villages were invaded, so the people escaped and they became refugees. Even with the war spreading everywhere, missionaries were there, but missionaries were limited in the Vientiane, the capital city. 1975, the Americans decided to withdraw from Vietnam, Cambodia, and they did the same thing from Laos. All the Hmong throughout the country knew that they would be left behind to be killed or tortured by the new communist government. So they began to escape. They escaped by foot, crossing the Mekong rivers to Thailand. It was crowded, all kind of health problems. People died almost every day, every night. In the midst of those sufferings and poverties and uncertainty about tomorrow, they accepted Christ in a great number in the camp. CMA missionaries were in the camps helping and taking care of and being consultant for us. So we consider ourselves members of the Christian Missionary Alliance. When the immigration began resettlement of the Hmong people into the United States, CMA churches were smaller churches, and they could not sponsor refugees. Very few did. And this year, 2003, we celebrated our 25th anniversary in America as Hmong district. So we have grown in these 25 years from 1,500 to 29,000 members. Even though we are under leadership of the CMA, we consider ourselves as indigenous churches, that we could lead our own churches. 50 years ago, the Hmong were living in Siang Kuang province in Laos, and we were missionary fields. And the CMA sent missionaries to us. And now 50 years later, the Hmong send our own missionaries out to other people. The Hmong have made a full circle from being a missionary field to missionaries. What I really appreciate the CMA, we are a movement to send out missionaries to the unreached people. And without that vision and passion of our founder, Dr. A.B. Simpson, I believe that the Hmong would not have heard the gospel. I am here, I know other denominations, big denominations, but they didn't send missionaries to Laos. It was a tiny, small denomination like the CMA that sent missionaries to us. And because of those missionaries, the Hmong accepted Christ, and the Hmong have been blessed by God.